My GPS told me the shortcut would save 12 minutes. By the time I realized the road had been blocked on purpose, I would have given anything to lose those 12 minutes. Because someone in those woods was waiting for cars like mine. This happened a little over 2 years ago, when I was 32. I was working as a nurse at the time, and I had just finished one of those weeks where every shift felt longer than the last. On my only free evening, I drove out to visit my parents, who lived a few towns over. I stayed later than I meant to. By the time I got back in my car, it was almost 11. I was tired, my scrubs were still in a bag on the back seat, and all I wanted was to get home, shower, and sleep. It was raining lightly at first. Not a storm, but the kind of cold rain that makes the road shine and turns every headlight into a blur. I had my GPS running because I didn't know the rural roads in that area very well. About 20 minutes into the drive, the app told me there was construction ahead on the main highway. Then it offered a faster route, 12 minutes shorter. At that hour, 12 minutes sounded like a gift. I turned onto a smaller road and followed it past a row of dark fields, then into a wooded area. The road narrowed almost immediately. There were no streetlights, no painted lines, and dense pines on both sides. My headlights only showed a short stretch of wet pavement at a time. I passed one lonely mailbox, then a closed farm gate with a chain wrapped around it. A few minutes later, my headlights caught a faded wooden sign that said, Pine Hollow. I remember thinking the name sounded pretty in the daytime and terrible at night. Still, nothing felt truly wrong at first. It was just an inconvenient back road. My wipers moved steadily. The heater blew warm air against the windshield. I had one hand on the wheel and the other resting near my coffee cup, trying to stay awake. Then I saw the pickup. It was parked at an abandoned picnic pull-off on the right side of the road. I only noticed it because my headlight swept across its side for half a second. It was an older, dark pickup, sitting with its lights off near a rotting picnic table and a broken trash bin. As I passed it, its headlights turned on. My stomach tightened, but I kept driving. I watched my rearview mirror, expecting it to pull out behind me. It didn't. The headlights stayed there, bright and still, fading behind the rain. I told myself it was probably nothing. Maybe a local hunter. Maybe someone taking a call where they had service. Maybe a couple parked in the woods. I was exhausted, and I didn't want to turn every strange thing into a horror story just because the road was dark. So I kept going. The GPS showed another 8 miles before I reached the main road again. A few minutes later, the pavement dipped, and my headlights caught the outline of an old wooden bridge ahead. It crossed a narrow creek or drainage ditch. On one side of the road was a shallow ditch filled with rainwater. On the other side, the pines were so close their branches scraped at the edge of the road. That was when I saw the branch. It lay across the road just before the bridge. At first, I thought it was a fallen limb from the rain, but as I slowed down, I realized it didn't look natural. It was big enough to stop a car, but not so big that it couldn't be moved. The smaller twigs had been snapped off. The thick end was angled toward the ditch like someone had dragged it there and left it across both lanes. I stopped about 10 feet away. The rain tapped softly on the roof. My wipers dragged across the glass. For a few seconds, I just sat there with my hands on the wheel, staring at it. I checked my phone. 1 weak bar, then nothing. I thought about reversing, but the road behind me curved tightly, and the ditch ran along one side. I didn't trust myself to back up in the rain without slipping off the road. Then, in my rearview mirror, I saw headlights appear far behind me. The pickup. It was coming slowly, not fast, not aggressively, just slow enough that I had time to understand what was happening and still not know what to do. My first instinct was to stay in the car and lock the doors. I had already locked them, but I pressed the button again anyway. The pickup kept coming. I told myself I had maybe 30 seconds to move the branch before it reached me. I grabbed my phone, even though it had no service, and opened the door just enough to step out. Cold rain hit my face immediately. The road smelled like wet pine and mud. I kept my driver's door open and the engine running. The branch was heavier than it looked. I grabbed the thinner end and pulled. It scraped across the pavement a few inches, then stuck. That was when I heard movement in the trees beside the bridge. Not a branch falling, not an animal running. It was the sound of weight shifting on wet leaves. I froze. The headlights behind me were closer now. I let go of the branch and backed toward my car. Then someone knocked on my passenger side window. 3 quick taps. I screamed so hard my throat hurt. There was a person standing in the dark on the other side of my car, not the driver behind me, not someone walking up from the pickup. Someone who had already been beside me. I couldn't see their face clearly through the rain and darkness. Just a shape close to the passenger door, one hand lifted near the glass. I threw myself into the driver's seat and slammed the door. My foot slipped on the wet floor mat as I hit the brake. I put the car in reverse without thinking. The pickup was close enough now that its headlights filled my mirrors. I turned the wheel and backed up anyway. My front bumper clipped the branch with a hard crack and the car jolted sideways. For one awful second, I thought I had gotten stuck. Then the person at the passenger door grabbed the handle. The sound was so clear, a hard jerk, then another. The lock held, but I felt it through the whole car, like the person was pulling at me directly. I stopped trying to reverse. There was nowhere to go backward. The pickup had angled partly across the road behind me, not completely blocking it, but enough that I would have had to squeeze past it in the ditch. So I did the only thing I could. I put the car in drive and hit the gas. The front of my car slammed into the branch. It scraped under the bumper with a grinding sound that made me think something had ripped loose. The car lurched, climbed over part of it, and dropped hard on the other side. The person beside me stumbled back. I shot forward onto the wooden bridge. The tires slipped on the wet boards, and the steering wheel jerked in my hands. For a second, the car drifted toward the side rail, and I thought I was going into the creek. I corrected too hard, fish-tailed, then finally caught the road again on the other side. I didn't look back until the bridge was behind me. In the mirror, I saw the pickup's headlights at the far end of it. The figure near my passenger side was gone. I kept driving. The road twisted through the pines for maybe another mile before I saw something ahead that made my chest drop. A locked Forest Service gate. It stretched across the road, metal bars shining in my headlights. A sign hung from the center, but I didn't stop long enough to read it. For a second, I thought I had driven straight into the end of the trap. Then I saw a muddy access path to the right. It was barely wide enough for one car, more like a maintenance track than a road. Branches hung low over it, and the ground looked soft. But I took it. The sides of my car scraped against pine branches. Mud sprayed up over the windows. I kept expecting headlights behind me or another person standing in the path, but I didn't stop. I just kept going, gripping the wheel so hard my fingers cramped. After what felt like forever, the path spilled onto a paved road beside a small white church. There were no cars in the church lot, but there were houses farther down the road with porch lights on. I didn't stop at the church. I drove until I reached a row of houses, then pulled under a street light and called 911 with shaking hands. The police found the road later, but by then the pickup was gone. The branch was still near the bridge, dragged partly into the ditch. They told me there had been 2 similar reports in that area over the past few months. Drivers finding debris placed across the road late at night. In one case, a man got out to move something and had his car stolen. That explanation almost made me feel better. Almost. The next morning, I looked at my car in daylight. The underside was scraped badly and the bumper was cracked from the branch. But that wasn't what made me feel sick. There were deep scratches around the passenger door handle. 4 lines in the paint, close together like someone had dug their fingers in while pulling. And above the window frame, There was a muddy handprint. It was smaller than I expected. Too small, maybe, to belong to a grown man driving a pickup. That was when I realized there may have been more than 2 people out there. One in the truck, one beside my car, maybe another waiting near the bridge or the gate or the picnic pull-off. I used to think the scariest thing on an empty road was being alone, but now I know it's realizing you never were.